If you want to have a look at my SuperCoach side, chances are it's going to change between now and next week. But I wanted to give you the legit first look at my SuperCoach side heading into opening round. I'll tell you who I've got, why I've got them, and how I've ended up with under 3,000 left in my salary cap kitty. All that is coming up on today's episode. It is my SuperCoach team reveal, pre-opening round edition. One quick disclaimer before I jump into the selections, who I've got, where I've got them, and why, is the fact that this is before opening round. So much can change, whether that be selections of rookie options that we thought we'd have that just didn't either come on in scoring, get vested, injuries that may take place, or there could be some advantageous movements that you and I could take advantage of with some guys being some nice 3 or 4 week runners due to a really exciting scoreboard element. So is this what my side is going to look like when we hit the official first rolling lockouts in round one? Probably not. But with all the information I have right now, wanted to let you know what my side is. In at D1, I've got the money. I'm going for it. I'm getting my hands on Harry Sheezel. Yeah, 630 plus K is a ton of coin. But by putting him in this spot, it gives me a couple of options. One, really protects some of the defensive structures I'm running with from a buy cadence perspective. It gives me a captaincy and vice captaincy option early. And I do feel he, of all the players, and I've got a few at the pricier end, but he's the only guy I have over 600,000 in this team. He's one of the more immune players, should health be on his side, from really cataclysmically falling away. I loved what I saw in the Community Series game. It confirmed what I knew and saw late last year, that even when he sits in this high half-forward role, pushes through the midfield, he's just got such a license to roam, gets involved in all the elements of the game, including scoreboard impact. I just want to get my hands on him now. I'm absolutely locking that in. I'm happy to get Sheezel at D1. Then I start value hunting immediately from there. Jaden Short in at D2, under 450K. He's got multiple years in SuperCoach prior to this one of being a mid to high 90s average guy. There's just nobody else that they seem to really love the ball in hand as much. He's got the most penetrating kick in this team. And while there are some kids that are going to develop nicely in this ecosystem, there's going to be a lot of ball back there. A lot of it is going to flood through him. Now, I think he's going to get us back to that 90s sort of range with no early buys, a pretty favourable early average. And I think a lot of balls sitting in that Richmond defensive line. He's just going to have every opportunity to succeed. So I'm happy to jump on with a Jaden Short sitting in that spot. Matt Roberts is my D3. He's one of a couple of guys sharing buys, whether or not all three either A, make it, or B, get to that buy round in general will be something we get to watch and see with interest. But Matt Roberts, not far off from a price point perspective from Jaden Short. He's got that role. And what's really interesting to me now is with no Errol Goulden, I was a little intrigued to see how does Roberts, Goulden, McInerney, who all score so much through transition and uncontested ball, whether or not there's going to be enough of the volume of that for Roberts to really deliver that mid to high 90s numbers that he did late last year, which didn't have a Justin McInerney in the side. But without Goulden, I can really see Roberts hitting those territory of numbers with really little challenge. There's no Mills. There is no Goulden. These are two of their better ball movers through the midfield. I can see Roberts really continuing on in that space, and guys like McInerney up on the wings really impacting through there. So very happy to sit with him in that spot. D4 is a Harry Perryman. I've been hearing all preseason that he's going to be in as that defensive-minded midfielder to play that protective element alongside the likes of a Dacos, DeGoey, Pendlebury, and others. And that's exactly what I saw in his Community Series match. Some aren't infatuated with the numbers he delivered. Politely, I don't care about SuperCoach scores in a preseason or a practice game. I want to see roll. He is a guy that will score heavily through what gets done at contested situations, stoppages, whether it be first hands on the ball, winning the clearance, or providing the body and the shepherd to create for his team, let alone the defensive work rate and the tackles. He's a really nice piece to this Collingwood midfield. He's got the role. And with having a couple of these guys in this low 400s price point, I do have now at least outlets to be able to go in and get one of the other guys that are in this range or a little below, like a Freach, and get my hands on that should one of them not pop early. Again, two of them, I'm going to get a look in opening round in Roberts and Perryman. Either of those guys, they dish me up a 60s. Look, I've got a free jet to be able to jump over to if I need to, let alone if a rookie pops. But Harry has the role. I think the scoring to get him in that 90 range is going to be there. And at that price point, that is absolutely value for me. D5, Sam De Koning. Some got scared off that he didn't score great. For me, again, I come back to who had the role, and I liked what I saw from Sam. Yep, physically was shuffled around a little bit and doesn't have the easiest of ruck run, but with no Toby Conway, with a Mark Blixarves playing a supportive role, I think he can do that. He even drifted back and did some nice things defensively when Blix was playing in that ruck opportunity. I just don't think with what they've got in their defensive side now, they need a De Koning in that spot. And he offers something to this midfield mix that certainly a Reece Stanley can't. And is a supportive dynamic to go with a Mark Blixarves. So to me, just over that 350,000 price point, again, his opening round score is going to be really indicative, let alone the role that sits through there. But I'm very, very happy to have him in that spot. And then my final few defenders, the first of the cash cows sits through me. The one I feel most comfortable with fielding right now from a basement on score field is a Jackson Pryor at just under $170,000. He looked good. Again, in that practice game against Geelong, a lot of time he was open for the outlet kick when they were trying to open up the ground. And for one reason or another, Essendon just didn't do that, whether that be just the nature of game style that they're looking to or a really narrow ball movement that can happen at GMHBA Stadium. We'll have to wait and see if that was more indicative or not. Again, another one of these players we get a look at opening round, but he's one of only a couple of cash cow defenders. And if you are going to have one on field in SuperCoach, he feels to me one of the safest options to go there. I'm interested to see how he goes. And then my bench options, Zach Reid. He's got the best job security, probably of all of them. Maybe has some of the greatest volatility in terms of what his ceiling could be versus his basement, but he does have some SuperCoach scoring capacities that I like. Well, a James Leake, another one of these guys that's got an early buy, but I'm pretty happy with how the balance of it rolls out. Had the leading centre bounce presence in their community series game. Some would say that's a bad sign. I would argue it's probably the other. Again, looking at James and how he plays, he offers some defensive stuff and some work around stoppage that these games aren't really favoured. So that's my backline. Sheasel, Short, Roberts, Perryman, De Koning, Pryor, Reid and Leake. Yes, outside of two of them, they've all got an early buy, but as you see through the structure, through the rest of my team, that's not really something I'm too concerned about to get to my best 18 on field. Pretty happy with how that looks. You might have a question, MJ, what are you going to do if some of your other options require you to fill out players? Where are your parachute options? We'll talk to you about those ones throughout this episode. Let's hit the midfield. My M1 this year is Andrew Brayshaw. I'll be honest, I think if you want to go back and check out on the channel, it's confirmed for you there. Did have Marcus Bontempelli in that spot in my first iteration. I may have even had Zach Butters at 2. You can't get either of those guys. So Andrew Brayshaw for me, what I saw on the weekend was confirmation of what I was expecting. Heavy centre bounce presence, especially without a Hayden Young in the side for at least round one. An unbelievable fixture. His work rate is elite. He's tidied up some of those skill deficiencies about him, and now he's found a way to add some impact on the scoreboard more than he ever has before. He's just such a super coach player. I know some people knock his efficiencies at time, but he just gets involved in all of these elements, score involvements, contested possessions, uncontested possessions. He hooks up His teammates well with the defensive work rate too. He just feels like he's never out of a game in Supercoach. And I think he's one of the few mids that is going to storm out of the gate really, really strong. And I don't want to spend over that $600,000 price point. I have done that with Sheasel. Yes, Brayshaw's got the C at the moment, but let's be honest, we're 2 weeks away from really having to figure out exactly who has got it. But to me, when you go through your fixture analysis, based on who sits with the Vs and the Cs in what games, he feels like a pretty safe C for me in round 1. In at my second midfield spot, I promise, no word of a lie, this is not Crom bias, but Jordan Dawson has looked sensational this pre-season. Go back and check out my episode on him in the 50 most relevant if you want a more in-detailed analysis on it. But simply, yes, the midfield rotation is not exclusively his. It has got Crouch. It does have Peatling. It does have Rankin. It does have Saligo. And a little bit of Draper, if I get my way. But gee whiz, he looks good. Still a heavy centre bounce presence. The reason we saw scoring diminish last year was twofold. One, the Crows got really culled by injuries in a couple of key positions, most notably a Riley Thilthorpe. And then second, they just lacked for depth in a bunch of options through that forward line, skillful users on the outside, and players that could rebound and intercept. It feels like with the arrivals of who they've traded and free agent pickups that they've got, let alone what they've done at the draft, I feel like they've mitigated all of those depth issues that they've had. And now Dawson is able to be the one wood in his primary position, which is midfield, and then he will rotate forward, which isn't that bad of a thing when it's a rotation rather than necessity placement, which it was early last year with Walker being unfit due to some back issues. No Thilthorpe. They just lacked for some height through there. Him as a third or fourth tall option is just a scary prospect for anyone to match up against. But I also think the other element that's added to this is outside of the Crows' improved depth, is the Crows as an entirety of a side will be better than what they were last year and do have a really nice fixture early on. So I think his skill set, his disposal usage, the improvement of players around him is just going to protect him to not have to be the only man carrying this team. And I think because his skill set is so strong in these areas, it's actually going to help him return back to what we saw in 2023. And as a result, that's captaincy, vice-captaincy territories, that's top 8 mid territories, and value based on his price point. I'm jumping on because I think that run at the start of the year looks exceptional, and I want every piece of it. There are others that could have gone in that spot. I did have a look at Dacos. I did have a look at Petrarca, but I'm pretty settled on a Jordan Dawson. M3, I think everyone's got this guy. It shouldn't take too long to talk about Clayton Oliver at just over 450,000. He looks exceptional. He's not going to kick multiple goals in every game like he did on the weekend of the Community Series, but the intensity is back, the work rate is back, the ferocity at the contest, albeit in a practice game, is back. Just take it to the bank. If you want to create separation, find other spots in your Supercoach side to do it. I would rather have Oliver, and if it goes stinky, jump to any of the other outlets that it could be, rather than trade into him. He's got 120 pedigree on his name, and he looks good. I don't know if he'll get back to that level, but he only has to get back to a 105, 110 to return value for us, and I'm very comfortable that he's going to do that for us. Then we really open up into the value spaces. Not too far away from the Oliver price point, Adam Chera is who sits at M4 for me. Maybe a little too high for some or a little too low for others. Seeing a bit of difference inside, some just running run premium mid, others looking at Connor Rosie in this price range too. The reason for me for Chera is, again, go back through my episode of the 50 most relevant to dissect more of what I like about him. But the biggest concern around Chera hasn't been able to get consistency in his body. This is the first pre-season that I can go back and see where it's been flawless. And let's touch wood and hope that that maintains for him. But a combination of flawless pre-season and an unbelievable early fixture, which gets kicked off against Richmond, and a history of going for multiple months in seasons of 115, 120 plus. I feel like he's the guy that in this price range, outside of Oliver, of all of these sort of 450 to 350 sort of price point guys, he's the one that I feel the greatest confidence that could accelerate and boom out at a 120 plus. I know some love a day in this space, and I've got no problem with them doing that. But also, given I've got such a heavy buy options in my defensive line where it's really short, Sheasel, and everyone else is copying one, I need that depth. So I'm happy with Chera. I love the fixture run. I love the flawless preseason. I feel like he's got an explosive start on the cards. James Peatling, my team is called Peatling Season this year. I am bullish on James Peatling. I promise you, it's not the Crom bias. It's the fact that even with a sort of 50% split of mid-forward like we saw in the Community Series game against Brisbane, he just looks so good in so many spaces. He's explosive around the ball with speed, got reasonable skill set about him. When he goes forward, he does look creative and damaging when he rests through there. And on top of that, it was in game that does not have a lot of stoppages. And that's where Peatling does his work, is at clearance and through the work rate and defensive stuff that he does. I think he could absolutely explode with 90 plus to 100 scoring options, which is really what he was last year at the Giants when he had that sort of 50% centre bounce ratio, was sort of that 90s guy in SuperCoach. And I think he's going to get a similar time split at the midfield. And as a result, I just want a piece of this. Yeah, some might go Hollands over Peatling, and I'd understand that as well. Others might want another rookie option that sits in this spot because they're running deeper. Either they've got a higher end ruck options than what I might be running, wanting to do something a little bit more spread cash through the back line and, drop a Sheasel down to pick a name, a Sicily type, and then be able to protect no cash cows or rookies on the field. I'll hear that, but for me, I'm really happy with that. Those are where I'm sitting at the 1 to 5 spot in my midfield. Then we hit the under 200k club. Elijah Sardis gets first crack at this, just under 200k. He is entirely there, opening round pending. If he spuds it, if it doesn't go his way, I'm absolutely off him because there's enough options in this midfield space. I don't have to have him in there. There's a ton of under 200k guys I'd still love my hands on. But if the role is anything like we saw in the Community Series game, this looks pretty decent to me. I do want a piece of it. I like that he's improved parts of his game. Still some nervousness when he kicks the ball, but if he can do that work defensively and through hands, that might protect some of those elements. Levi Ashcroft, I'm happy to have him on field too. I know some are a little concerned that he's got a little bit of a vest about him, which politely all these guys under 200k, pretty much in all positions, certainly mid, let alone mid-forward, have. But gee whiz, he could not have been more impressive with the opportunity and the minutes he's had this pre-season. I remember talking to fellow coaches panelist Kane about him. We were talking about where we'd put him in our rankings, and he's done a great episode on our sister podcast, Finders Keepers, talking about where he'd go in a keeper draft, which you can go and check out. And in that episode, he and Jordox are talking about how Chris Fagan are reflecting on he probably would have played for them last year, and he was at a bottom, he's 2 weeks away from being a bottom ager in the under 18s, let alone being eligible to be in the draft class. So this is rarefied talent. He's just as good as his brother as far as I'm concerned. Lock and load. And I think he's one of only 3. Well, I know there's a few guys through here that have early buys with Sardis and Ashcroft and others that you'll see, but really very comfortable to flip it through given where their buy, at least currently, looks like it could sit. And then my last on-field option is an Angus Sheldrick. No Mills, no Goulden. There's an opportunity that sits through there. Yes, we didn't get to see a Warner or a Heaney in the game most recently, but he does offer something. There's a little bit of speed, there's a bit of skill, and there's a little bit of power. I think he fills out this midfield nicely to support Warner, to support Heaney, to support Rowbottom. I think he adds a bit of a dynamic that's further ahead and just a bit more upside than what a Taylor Adams or even a James Jordan could bring to this side. I think he's got that fourth option spot locked in, at least for the first month, until we see a Callum Mills. And honestly, if he scores well in opening round, let alone round one, that price acceleration, let alone the proven role, where I think he was borderline best 22 anyway before these injuries to Goulden and to Mills, I just think he's going to be a pretty solid scorer for us. So I'm happy to have him on field. Then my midfield bench, will fly through them pretty quickly. Finn O'Sullivan could not have been more impressive if he tried on the weekend. Yes, it was against a lower caliber of opponent in West Coast, but his license to roam and then the fact that he moved to halfback in the second half was just enough to wet the whistle for me that said that maybe, just maybe, he might get that second distribution spot alongside a Caleb Daniel. And if he does, wow, he could deliver us 90s in that spot if that becomes permanent. Temper expectations, not saying it's happening, but that is the upside potential. I've got Xavier Lindsay at M10, just like what he is. Skillful user. He is out on the wings. Think Caleb Windsor type scoring of last year, but best 22, probably one of their best ball users through the midfield already. Does not make wrong decisions with ball in hand. And again, if he gets any halfback transition scoring that can go his way, he could really pop for us. Then I got Mitch Nevitt sitting in there. So no dual position links. Am I opening up at this point in time just yet with the flex? That's not as necessity-wise a preseason structural need. You could use that flex spot to open that up with much more ease. I like Mitch Nevitt's game. He does have a bit of a sub-concern. I know some think that, but to me, I really, really like Mitch Nevitt. Let's head into the ruck line. Tom De Koning's my R1. Any question marks about whether or not he's going to roll share? Got dismissed when Pitternet went down injured. I think this is going to be one of the most popular selections amongst coaches that are at least looking for an element of value and not just going set and forget lines like a Cherry and a Gawn as their combination. De Koning offers value and he offers scoring ceiling, and it's a great early matchup. So to me, I do want my hands on that. I'm happy to roll with Tom De Koning. R2, this is where I might be a little different to you. Matt Flynn. Yep, not at flex, at R2. $261,900. I thought he was really impressive against Tristan Cherry. Not getting led astray by the SuperCoach score. I actually thought he was impressive. The way he involved his midfield, which is not a high-class midfield, outside of Tim Kelly and Harley Reid. I thought he brought them into the game as well as anyone could and has done against a Tristan Cherry of note. There was some talk at the start of the match that Minnie McWalter hadn't really made the decision. Was it him or was it Williams? Was it Reid? Who's going to get that number one spot? After watching that game now twice, I'm really certain that Matt Flynn's got that spot. Now, what happens if it's not true, MJ? Simple. Go back through my team. I've got a couple of option outlets that are very, very easy to make changes without really hurting my side or my structure too much. I'm not saying I'm going to do this, but how would I get them up to, hypothetically speaking, a Max Gawn type? Well, pretty easy. And I'll get to the forward lines and you might see that. But a Sheasel down to another top line defender can bring me upwards of $100,000 without too much work. A Dawson down to a Rosie can give me some money without too much work, let alone what I could potentially do with the Peatling down or a Cherra down. Like there's so many 100 there, 50K there. I can make that money with relative ease and not feel like I'm breaking my structure. Again, haven't told you my forwards yet. Haven't told you my flex. And again, multiple different outlets that are going to be like, yep, change that, off we go. Like, for example, I'm running, and I'll tell you now, Horn Francis and Rankin. I'll just run one of them, put Garcia into my forward line and run another cash cow and throw an O'Sullivan type or Davidson on field. Problem solved. So that's the important thing when you're heading to a venture like a Matt Flynn, heading into opening round, let alone in season, is what happens if it goes wrong at that price point? It's two trades. But politely, for most of the correctional movements we're going to do, it's probably two trades. So I'm pretty happy to sit in that spot. And again, it only needs to be 5 or 6 weeks and I'm away and I'm laughing. I just believe that the rucks are really still quite open for us. And if they're not clear and supreme, which I do think Gawn and Cherry will be the best, but I don't think it is so far ahead of everybody else. If the variables for a healthy Marshall, a De Koning stays number one, if Tim English can repeat his form, let alone Kieran Briggs, who might be a slow starter, Nank is not as far away as people might think that he is. I just don't think it's as these two are 10 points better than everybody else. Therefore, I'm going for a couple of options that give me a little bit of a look, make me some money, which is important as well. Archer Reed is my R3. Nice little link when it comes to Flynn. Does have ruck forward status, which is handy. I did run Reedy for a period of time in my flex spot, let alone in at R2. I liked the look of it. I still might look at that as an option for me, but right now, Reed just opens that up. Again, if he's not the guy that's there, we're going to have a void that we could sit in that spot, let alone look for a red dot to open up the BCC scoring capacities. In at the flex, yeah, let's talk about the flex. It's always at the bottom, but let's throw it in there. I've got Garcia from the Saints. I really like what he's doing. Was third in the midfield rotations this week behind Steele and McRae. I know Sinclair's to come back in, so we'll watch and wait and see what that midfield does with him in there. And Isaiah Wangadeen Miller also trialled through there in the second half. I just think at worst he's the fourth option, and at under 250,000 with midfield, and he's shown he's more than capable in that spot. Pretty happy with it. Really pretty happy with it. Then let's jump into the forwards to wrap up this episode. Spending a lot of time talking you through. I hope you're enjoying it. If you are, comment below. Let me know how similar is my team to yours. I would love to know. Jason Horne-Francis is my F1. If you don't have Rosie in the midfield, think you've got to have Horne-Francis. No Butters opens up an opportunity for more of the superstar midfielders, yeah, forward, but superstar midfielders to have more of the ball. Their fixture is so good early. I think you need a piece of one of those guys. I think you need a piece of one of the Crows mids, one of the Freo mids, and one of the Port mids, and probably one of the Carlton mids too, given how good it is for them early days. And so I've got a little bit of each of all of those for me. I love Horne-Francis and what he could be. I think there's a bit more ceiling than what people give him credit for, especially with a player like Butters out. While I don't think a huge market share of ball drastically comes his way, just the way Port Adelaide play, they get scaled up so significantly because they're so restrictive with what their opposition do. It really favours them. I think that could really benefit Horne-Francis, let alone if he does what I think he is bound to do, which is set for the real breakout season. Isaac Rankin, yeah, I'm going the two primo forwards. This is going to cost me maybe, but I'm happy to run the Flynn-Rankin combination through there. Yes, I got Sheasel, but I'm not going to go back through the wheelhouse of all of that. I just love the upside of Rankin. The only issue that has ever been there for him as a reason to not start him, outside of other combinations, is you're worried about the hamstring injuries and the soft tissue. But again, faultless preseason, a better midfield split than I thought he would have, and he's still impacting the scoreboard in this spot. I think he's destined for not just a 100 forward option for us this year. I think he and Horne-Francis could both knock the door of that 110 territories just because of how impactful they are, both at clearance and then how they get involved in scores. I'm pretty bullish on Rankin this year being an absolute standout. Jackson McRae at he's not F3, but he's playing as a midfielder. You've got him, you've picked him, he's in that midfield role. He's accumulating his high centre bounce. Absolutely not someone to take on. I'm going him. Bailey Smith at F4. Some might have faded him without him playing in the community series. Of course, you could get to watch and see what he does in opening round. But to me, it's going to have to be a cataclysmic disaster of what he does in opening round that makes me fade interest in him. Just think he's one of their best ball movers. He's got some good centre bounce guys around him to support that transition scoring that he has. He offers unbelievable value. I just don't see where he doesn't go 90 this year. I want every piece of that. Riley Sanders at F5. It's a little deeper than I thought I would be running. I thought I'd get Caleb Daniel in here, but all the variables have landed his way with no Adam Treloar, with no Marcus Bontempelli. It's him and Libba now that are really going to be driving through this midfield, with Harms and Kennedy playing the support roles for at least the first few weeks of the season. He's now got that opportunity and role. Again, The outlet is down to a cash cow that pops, so I'm happy days with the flex. Like I said, I got Garcia there. I can open that up and get to any other position on field if I need to. So he's another parachute, but he'll have the role. He's shown at junior territories he can score in SuperCoach, and he's shown when he's in the centre bounce midfield role, which is where he's at his best in SuperCoach, his points in those roles is really, really strong. So I'm very, very happy to have a piece of Sanders. And then Caleb Daniel, look, probably one of, if not the biggest SuperCoach locks of the year. He's got that distribution role. The ball is funneling exclusive through him, under $270,000. Like, just don't sleep on it. Don't question it. Pick him. And then my last two forwards, I'm pretty happy to roll with both of these guys. Davidson from the Dogs, playing across the wing, looked excellent. Wingmen aren't going to be guaranteed the most predictable scoring, but he looked good in the bits I've seen from him in all the preseason, the practice matches, and the internal trials. His work rate up and down the ground looks elite. He's adding something a little bit more offensively that other wingmen haven't. I think he's pretty safe inside that best 22. Every year, Bevo falls in love with someone that's come from the second tiers of the state leagues. And I think it's Davidson this time around. He looks like an absolute ripping pick. So too does Connor Stone. Floated across the forward and the back lines in the Community Series match. I'm watching his role with interest in opening round. But again, a team that really are needing to find that balance between pushing for premierships and thinking about the future all at the same time. They've lost some depth with Cumming and Perryman. I think he and Leake are probably the two most likely that are going to fill those voids that sat in their side, albeit they're different types of players. I think the way they're going to move things around, they're sitting in that best 22. But that's my squad for SuperCoach. It's before opening round, so a lot could change. All it takes is an injury, an opening round pop, a suspension. A debutant doesn't come along. Everything could change, and quite possibly it will. But do you agree or disagree with my side? You can't really disagree with it. You just might not like it, and that's totally different. But if you're watching this on YouTube, comment below and let me know your thoughts on this SuperCoach side. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so and give us a like. Turn the notification bells on so that as soon as an episode drops, you get notified straight away. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, thanks so much for doing so. Make sure you've subscribed to this platform and you've given us a 5-star rating. If you haven't shared the Coaches Panel podcast with a friend, make sure you do so. We so appreciate your advocacy and support of the Coaches Panel, and that's one of the ways you can do so, as well as hitting the 5 stars on this channel. Hey, don't forget, you can check out us across social media. If you're not sure where to find us, all the details and handles are in the description of this episode. If you want to get your hands on some Coaches Panel merch, you look good, and you're a 5% better SuperCoach player with Coaches Panel merch on. Maybe you think that's debatable after seeing my team. Who knows? But you can get your hands on some of it. There's hats, there's caps, there is jumpers, there is T-shirts, there's notebooks, there's a ton of stuff. Get in there, look good, support the Coaches Panel while you do it. And you can become a Patreon, a supporter of the Coaches Panel. If you've checked out a heap of these episodes in the preseason and you've loved what we've done, one of the simplest ways you can give back is become a Patreon. Not only do you get bonus content from the Coaches Panel for doing so, but it's one of those small, simple acts to support us here at the Coaches Panel for the work we've given and support we've given you this preseason. Well, opening round, it's not far away. How much changes comes round one? We'll have to wait and see. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll do an AFL fantasy team reveal on the channel in the next day or so, as well as plenty of other content as we get ready for the start of your 2025 SuperCoach season.